passionate about 12A, and the reason I'm passionate about recording conversations is it's more than myself. Like, it's more than what I can contain in my mind. And I want it out, and I want to see it, and I want to play with it. So when you're talking about beating Christianity like a dead horse, my answer would be just crucify it. It worked last time. No, but it's almost like it's not, right? So
I actually had this really cool T-shirt design today in my head, at least for me. So I saw this sweater at the airport on my way home, and so it was like basically a crew neck, and then they had like a teddy bear with X's as eyes, and it was like blue outlines and like a beige, you know, where the patches would be, like the ear patches and like the belly patches. It was just like beige. And I was just like, imagine a cartoony looking Jesus, like leaning on the cross like this, just like sitting almost like a teddy bear, and then like X's for eyes.
crosses for eyes.
It's like, it's just
pretty dark.
I was like, that's kind of like this literally cool.
You wouldn't be posting this anyways.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not.
I kind of like that, you know, it's cool.
Yeah, if you post that, people in the comments will be like, crucify him! Dude, that's what I should name the shirt. It's a crucify him.
The crucify him tee.
Ooh, kill him. Can you imagine the black people were around for when they were sentencing Jesus?
Yeah.
Just a fat little black boy like, ooh, kill him.
Ooh, kill him.
Dude, that was like 2014. It's old.
Oh, it's old.
Yeah.
That's old.
Because I was listening to the J. Cole album.
Yeah.
Like 2014, Forest Hills Drive. And he was referencing Terry O there. So good.
That's crazy. It's crazy also how many people's minds retain certain information, like names of people and the theories and things that they've spoken about, and like songs and albums, and I'm just like, I think that's like the one weakness. Like if we really did get to pick our traits and like, you know, sliders, like, oh, I want this much memory, I want this much luck, I want this much intelligence and whatever. It's like the name memory specifically, like, because I think memory is like different, right? You can remember it like visually, auditory, like, you know, like, so it's like the names, just, I put the slider down to 0. It's like, I don't need anyone's names. I'll forget people's names. I've had moments of fear where I was like, oh gosh, what if like family from the Philippines comes who I've known their names for like my whole life, but in the moment I'll forget their name. Like it'll just escape that part of my mind where I can grab it and reach for it. Oh, it's the worst. It's the same way as I used to fear about praying the rosary. I'd always fear like I'm just gonna I'll say Hail Marys, and then all of a sudden, like the 8th one in, I'll just forget how to say it. Like that was my fear. It never actually happened, but my fear was like
I understand
I'll stumble on myself, and then you'd stumble and be like, what's the next line? Because I'm also really bad at that. I don't know if you can, but if I said, okay, start from just past the first line after Holy Mary, like, what do you say?
I'm like, oh, what would I say?
Yeah.
I say you're trying to like trick me into praying the rosary. Shut the hell up.
Wow, all the noises are coming out to play now, eh?
Well, whatever. Sorry, when you're talking about not remembering names, in my mind, I'll be like, if you actually mess up so bad, it's like, you know, the great prophet once said, love your enemies. What was his name? Judas. It's like, that's why he actually ended up kissing Jesus. Dude, I have so many jokes about Judas.
I remember this.
I'm just adding to it. We're just going to create like a whole bit on like why Judas kissed Jesus.
You really think about why Judas kissed Jesus. Oh, gosh.
Anyways, you wanted to start from scratch?
Yeah, so if I want to start from scratch, but yeah, so something that came up was that I was talking to a friend a couple days ago, and we got into the conversation about faith. Um, like basically our personal practicing of our faith and the purpose. Like, is there like what value does it bring? And I think we've all gone through that at some point where we've kind of gotten lazy on practicing. You know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, I don't really want to practice. I don't really feel like going to church or praying or whatever. But this took a step further where it was more so, what value is there in practicing? And so maybe I still believe, or I still hold the beliefs to like a respectable standard. But I'm not going to really call myself a Christian anymore.
Sorry, yeah, my mind was just like, you talking about. Not the game.
Whereas,
Sorry.
not the game.
So funny. It's like, not the God who gave his life, but practice. Dude, I'm sorry. Carry on your point.
No,
It's just
it's
so
good.
distracting.
I like that. No, yeah, it's just I personally have found myself that I don't ever see myself ever really, unless something really massive changes. I really don't see myself ever wavering from what I believe as far as like Christianity, right? Whether I'm practicing it really well or not, or kind of just completely on the wrong path for whatever reason. I don't think I'll ever be a point where I doubt and say, well, no, Christianity is kind of like not the play. You know, I'll still always stand behind it as um the ideals,
Sure.
right? So Christianity, like, or Catholicism, like, preaches an ideal of how to be because it challenges you to be outside of yourself, outside of like human nature, to um again be like loving, understanding, humble, like those kinds of things where it's like that's just not normal for me as a human being. um so I could never really question that that's not a good thing to strive for, whether I'm doing it or not. That's just part of like the journey, right? um and granted, I was talking to my friend, it wasn't like she was saying, oh yeah, I don't want to be humble, like she was still striving for those ideals, but essentially it was like, why does it have to be through Christianity? I think that was the major question, like, why then through Christianity? And it did get me thinking, because we can have a debate about whether you can find these ideals in other parts of the world, um and I'm sure you can definitely find like very similar belief systems, right? Overarching concepts and stuff. But I think, I don't know, it just made me question as well. Like, is that, I guess I was wondering for you, like, I actually do want to know where, for you, where does Christianity sit as far as importance, as far as like, yes, you currently believe, but could you ever imagine yourself saying, you know what, I don't actually need religion. I just need to be good.
I can, I guess, share my take on that. Um, have I consider, or will I consider just stepping away from religion? That
Mm-hmm.
was your question, correct?
Yeah, like,
I have been in this moment of like, in this area of a gift and a curse kind of situation.
mm-hmm.
I think for the past few months, I've been trying to shake religion off of me,
Oh,
but it's
really?
not shaking off.
So what does that mean? Like, what does that even look like? Paint a picture.
So, what does it look like? I haven't been practicing, obviously, for a while. And I'm just like, just stop. It's one of those. And I even like, the ironic thing is, I'm still doing like talks at church. And by the time you post this thing, I would have actually given a talk about this because it's literally what I'm going to talk about on Saturday, where and I'm like I have nothing else to talk about, so I'll just like I started just telling stories instead of like talking about theological stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, where before the first talk I gave, I was literally like, I don't think I should be doing this, and I was literally trying to find any way out of having to do talks at church
Yeah.
because I'm like, I haven't been practicing since the pandemic. So if I just tell someone, they'll be like, yeah, you can't speak in front of people. So I go talk to the priest, and he's like, oh yeah,
Oh, so you
come.
told the priest?
Yeah, for real.
You're just like, I don't think I
oh,
should be.
I'll literally straight up tell the principal I haven't been doing my homework, and then he'll kick me out of
Yeah,
school. Like, please
he will
kick me out
flunk
of
you.
school.
He'll
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so that's literally what I did. And through and the other part of this is no matter who I'm talking to, I have to be authentic. I don't necessarily lie or like make up
Mhm.
stuff to the best of my abilities. For example, I might not know that I'm lying, therefore I'm not lying.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
So I straight up tell him like why I'm not practicing. And man, I hate this guy. He's just like, oh, okay. He's like understanding about it. I'm like, screw you. He straight up he gave me this analogy of um you're like the baby
Mhm.
and God's like trying to hold you and you're being a dick about it and like
Yeah.
kicking him and he's just like, just chill, dude, just chill. So yeah, I'm literally in that position where I'm just like, maybe if I kick him in the balls, he'll just like drop me and then I can just go about my own way. But unfortunately, I still feel that, just like don't go anywhere sort of thing. So that's where I'm at. So I don't want to be there. I don't want to be part of faith or religion, but I also can't seem to shake it off.
Something compels you to stay.
Yeah. The power of Christ compels you.
That's what it means this whole time.
Yeah, this whole time.
That's actually really interesting. So, is it that you don't want to be a part of it though because it's easy? Like it would have been easier to just kind of be like, oh, like weight off your shoulders. You're no longer pressured to go to this.
No. I think it's much more complex than that. Because like I like discipline, I like whatever. I just also have a hard time belonging to like a group or whatever. And yeah, like to some degree you have to belong, etc., etc. Um, and the other layer, because the whole pandemic thing, you and I talked about this,
Mm-hmm.
where to some degree I still feel weird being around a lot of people. So the funny thing, the priest, his idea around this, he's like, yeah, continue doing your talks, whatever. Like at least you. He thought I disagreed with the church or like had like
Mm-hmm.
aggression or like whatever.
Yeah.
I don't like. For me, I almost see it as like I probably don't know enough to even like have a fight with the church. So like, yeah, I'm not coming from that angle,
Mm-hmm.
but I do have a hard time like being around other people who are praying and all that other stuff. So he's like, "Oh yeah, don't worry about like the weekend masses. Just maybe go start going to like one weekday mass and then maybe two weekday masses. So that's still kind of 1 hour. And again, for all the people that sort of like, oh, priests are sucky or whatever, or even sometimes your own parents are like, go to church. This guy was so like understanding about the whole thing. I'm like, sick. Like there's some level of apprehension, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
see someone in authority and like, oh, with a collar and like he's gonna behave a certain way, but he wasn't. And I'm like, that was nice. But so the next, I guess, on the Monday, I'm like, oh, I'll drop something off at the church for my mom, and then
Yeah.
I just stay. And I literally had this moment of like, I see the priest walk in, and I like standing in the back, and I look in, there's too many people. So I literally go, where the area is to go downstairs, down the stairs.
Yeah.
So I literally sit on those chairs. I'm like, I should go in. I should go in. So I'm like, the best I can do in this moment is sit on these chairs. I lasted for 10 minutes and then I went home. I still can't go back to church. It's a weird mental block.
So it's more of it's not like, because it's funny, part of you is saying, part of you is compelled to stay.
Yeah.
Like, as in, not at that specific moment, but compelled to stay generally overall.
Yes.
But when actually physically there, and
I don't want to be there.
you don't want to be there,
It has nothing to do with the people
or the religion.
specifically or the religion. It has some things broken in my brain. What?
No, it's like, yeah, I don't even like know what to say to that. Like, that's crazy. Like literally, like a little bit crazy. Like, you're just, I just don't want to be here. I can't. I have to stay.
But I also
don't want
can't
to.
leave. Like,
Yeah,
leave in like the big sense.
because you feel like it is the wrong thing to do.
Exactly. It doesn't seem right. I'm not saying like, oh, like
Mhm.
people are not gonna like see me. I don't give a shit about what people
Yeah.
think, but it just doesn't seem right. I also, to some degree, it's like religion and faith have given me so many gifts and things that maybe it's some level of nostalgia, but it's not entirely that. It's like a small portion of the
Yeah.
thing, but it's more so like I do think that human beings have a need to believe in something that's non-material, intangible, supernatural. There's always something that's going to need to fill that void, sort of what you were saying
Yeah.
earlier.
I think I think your situation is very different than like, yeah, like your situation I can't even really
I know,
speak to. It's
but
just
I
it's,
think that's the beautiful thing, right?
yeah.
Like your situation is different, your friend's situation is different,
Yeah.
my
Well,
situation
our
is
friend,
different.
you know her too, right?
Yeah, I know, but just for, like the point I'm trying to make is, and this is just our situation today,
Mm-hmm.
or at this phase of our lives.
And it's okay, but is it then? Let's say, like, do I have a responsibility then to help you get over your hump, or help her get over hers?
You have a responsibility to a certain degree, and your responsibility is to live your life in a way that you show that religion is actually providing you love and happiness and joy,
Mm-hmm.
and it's enriching your life. Outside of that, yeah, you can have conversations, but if you don't live your life that in a way that exudes that joy or exudes that benefit, it doesn't matter what you try to do or say to your friends, it doesn't mean as much. Or yeah, there's some level of conversations that do help. I'm not denying that,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the primary is it should just be obvious in the way that you behave. And I think that's the tricky part, right? Because I've been around people who have gone through funerals and grief and hardships that believe, and I've seen
It's
faith carry them through it.
Yeah, I've seen it as well, but
Yeah.
then it also slowly fades. I've seen that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so they'll go through it, and then they'll be in it for a while, but then life will pull them away a
Okay.
bit, right? Like their daily.
So you can see that as a bad thing, but I see that as a good thing because I
Really?
see that as at the most dire situation, the faith is there to hold them up. It's almost the opposite of a bad friend. The bad friend is there at the good times and is gone at the bad times. Where sometimes the best of friends, you can lean on them in the worst of times.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, now the person who goes away from faith after grief, they're not being a good son
friend,
or a good
yeah.
friend. But that, what the situation that you talked about, it emboldens my trust in faith that God is actually there.
Because in the worst of times, there's something that people find comfort in. So listen.
When nothing else would comfort them. Or everything that would comfort them is like a vice.
Mm-hmm. Like it has a negative impact.
Yeah.
This would have a positive
Like
impact.
you go to drugs or alcohol
Yeah.
or like, sex, whatever.
Depression, even
Yeah.
just wanting to be alone, isolate yourself. It's all negative. No, that's actually a really interesting point that you're making. Like, because like to your point, like if people are being a bad friend or the prodigal son, in basically a better accurate example, or a better like, oh my god, analogy, thank you. They're the ones who are just like, they come home, have a nice meal, and then they leave again. But that's kind of the whole point, right? We are all like doing that on a daily basis on different scales, right? And the goal is to maybe get out of that habit, right? The goal is to get out of that habit. And stay home actually, finally, or actually stick around. But everyone has a different journey, a different path. No, that's a fair, interesting thing to take. And you found yourself currently, though, then in a position where you don't see yourself like stepping away, even though you kind of have. It's not like you know who your dad is. You know who your daddy is.
Who's your daddy? That's a good one. Again, it's when people make claims about their future, like
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, you can want to believe something or like want to be somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
but and that could to some degree propel you there, like the whole self-fulfilling prophecy or whatever. But I also don't know what's gonna happen in the future, right? Like I don't know if I'm just gonna be like, okay, I tried and tried and tried, it's not working, so I'm gonna like crank the pedal to the other side and just like cut all ties,
Yeah.
you know? Or I'm like, okay, no, I'm just gonna lean in for like a month and try my hardest, because it's like I look back to the guy who's like sitting in this hallway when there's mass going on. I'm like, what is freaking wrong with you? Just walk into the damn church and sit down, and then stand up, and then sit down and stand up
Yeah.
and kneel and just go home after. But he's like, no, I can't do it. Shut the hell up. You know, it's
You speaking about yourself?
yeah. This honestly like
Or like us? Like,
no,
like we've done this
I
several
was talking
times.
about me in the third person. Like
So you're actually getting mad at yourself for like not being.
yeah, yeah. But then again, the whole like, oh, you gotta understand where you're at and all that BS. Whatever. What are you gonna do?
So my last question then about that is how much do you think community has a play on like sticking around though? Because to you, part of you feels compelled to stay because of whatever you don't know. But how much of, let's say, your community or circle keeps you there? Because to kind of paint a picture of someone else who, let's say, doesn't have that community, I can only imagine like what's the point of, there's no reinforcing reason to stay or to go to the church or be in your faith if your entire circle around you doesn't really practice anyways, right? Like
I think that might be like a social interaction difference that I have.
mm-hmm.
I don't care what the people around me are doing. I just know like what my standard is for like work or sports or prayer,
Mm-hmm.
and those are my standards. Sure, my standards are based off of my value system, and my value system is based off my upbringing. But in terms of if you stop going to church, like I think we went through a phase where I was going to church and you weren't going to church.
Yeah.
I didn't care. Like I'm still going to church because I want to go to church. I'm still going to be your friend because I want to be your friend. I have no overlap of like, oh, I need a community that thinks like me and acts like me and holds me accountable and encourages me. I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not helped as much by that. Sure, everyone needs some level of community, but part of my life goal is like, you know the whole saying of like no man can live as an island.
Yeah.
My goal in life is to prove that thing wrong. Like, could have buy my own island, won't get caught. Sorry, I don't know. But going back to the whole community thing,
Yeah.
because I have done some pretty difficult things, and I find it best when I hold myself accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because if someone else holds me accountable, and I think you've tried now and then, and like, I will just like shit on you. You know, it's like,
no, exactly.
because I'm like, I'll find my own reasons to do it, and I'll do it. And if I fail, I fail, but I fail by myself. If I win, then I win. You know, because of the efforts I put in. I still believe in teamwork and all that, but there's some level of like, this is mine.
No, yeah, that's definitely something I remember with it. Like,
So are you one of those like the community affects me people?
actually, that's a fun question. Hard to say. I think I want to say no. My instinct is to say no. Like, no, not really. But I think that that would be a little bit ignorant to say, because if I imagine myself, actually it's a tough call. I'm trying to basically like imagine myself back then in, you know, in the past, and like having been more active in the church versus like being older and not having as much of that like community that's constantly in your face, and how it would differ. I think I really don't know. Actually, I really don't know. Yeah, I still want to still lean on no, because, for example, how my views of my faith hasn't changed. So my views haven't just started slowly shifting because I don't have a church community around me. And I don't really see a major difference in how I would interact. Like, you know, we've been friends, you and me, for like years. And so it's not like I've become a different person. Like, again, you're part of my community, but like the point is, like, from having been fully in the circle, or like in that world, to kind of like being on the outskirts of it and kind of not really partaking in much or anything really. I don't think I've really made any crazy changes. My circle hasn't, and yeah, I interact with a lot more different people. But I do think in the little things, if I'm being honest, the little things I think affected me a little. Like, so for example, like going to church has been harder, or staying on top of praying, like praying more or whatever. Like, I think, like I was with a friend another day, and we were doing like some video work. Like, yeah, he asked me to help him out, do some video work for him, and we were heading home, and he's like, "You want to swing by the chapel?" And I was like, "What?" Like, it was like, that was a moment where I was like,
It's like, oh yeah, you have to pick him up.
yeah, like it was like, when was the last time I swung by the chapel?
Yeah.
Right. And I think if I see little things like that, I think if I go back to like early 20s days, high school days, there were definitely some moments where I might have been like, you know what, I should swing by. Like, I'm going to swing by on my way home or whatever, just to quickly like do, like, it wasn't that often, but it was still something that I had. It was more there in like, you know, in my mind. Like, it was in the front part of my mind where I'm like, it was an option. Then it slowly didn't. It was less of an option until I forgot it was even an option. Until when he did that, I was like, huh, I feel like I should go back. So there's some friendly reminders of like little things that maybe I forgot I could do. Or, ooh, another example actually. So now that I'm really exploring this, you remember Life Chain?
Yeah.
Like, that hadn't done in like years.
Mm-hmm.
And then just, was it like 2 weeks ago? So I was at Mass, and then all of a sudden I see the signs come out. I'm like, oh no. And like, it was that moment where I realized, and I saw the sign after, and it was like, it's after this Mass, like right after this Mass, they're going to go out and do it. And I was like, I really thought about that. I was like, I hadn't done this in at least 6-7 years, maybe. Right? Like, you don't think how much time passes, but you also have to account for like COVID took up like 3 years right there. Like, that doesn't really count because it wasn't even an option. But yeah, so that's another example of like.
So did you do it?
Begrudgingly.
Okay.
It was very like, because what happened was like, people had asked us like, you know, like, oh, you guys should stay, right, and go for it. And the thing is, we had plans like to leave, like to do something, and but they weren't like absolutely urgent. It wasn't like, oh, we have an appointment. It was like, this is just our goal. Our plan for today is to do this right after Mass. And so in the end, what happened is we ended up talking. We ended up meeting a friend, and then talking for like 30 minutes, 40 minutes even after Mass, like just talking in like the narthex, and like just catching up and everything. And then people who had already approached us originally right at the end of mass kind of saw us there and was just like, you should come out like 10 minutes, just do 10 minutes. And it was like it was one of those moments. And then my friend was like, yeah, let's just 10 minutes. We'll just do 10 minutes. And I was like, was I going to say no, right? And so I was like, no. I was like, no, I can't say no. So then I walked out there. But weirdly enough, I was like, I'm not holding this sign. I don't know. Actually, to this day, I'm like,
which sign or whatever.
Any sign.
Yeah.
Just like, because they were having signs like, oh, which sign do you want? And I'm like, well, you should hold a sign. And I was just like, no, I'm not gonna hold a sign. Because I guess part of me though was, because I wasn't planning on doing it, and then I didn't really do it. Like I clearly wasn't out there, and then all of a sudden I got pushed to do it a little bit. I was like, I'm not gonna do it. And in a moment, I was like, am I being too? Has my outlook on this changed? Right. But then I think it wasn't so much the outlook as it felt like a different person. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that I didn't stand by the message. It's just, I didn't think this was the best way to go about the message anymore.
Yeah.
And so to stand out here holding the sign didn't really add value. And I felt like me doing it just to do it also felt kind of ingenuine. And I was like, no. Again, maybe there was definitely something wrong with that approach. Maybe I should have just held the sign and just done it. I don't know. But
would you tell the people that were doing it, like your friends, would you share this with them?
What? Share the what?
Like when they asked you, like, oh, do you want to do this? It almost felt like some degree of peer pressure or like social awkwardness.
I made jokes actually when I first got asked to do it. Like not even my friend who asked. Like it was literally like just the volunteers. Like they're like, hey, you're gonna do life chain, whatever, right? I was like, oh, I've banked enough hours in that. Like I literally went into like I've got a couple Lou days till like about the whole thing. I went into the whole like, oh, actually I've moved up to management. I'm no longer a frontline worker. So I'm actually doing a lot of other things in the kind of like that kind of jokes. Like I don't remember.
Yeah, my jokes would not be appropriate for saying it to them at church.
But yeah, so I was kind of like in that. So when I got asked again, I was like, okay, fine. And I was like, I'm gonna bank these hours too, I guess. Would you ever do it?
What
again?
Would
you have been in my position? Would you have approached
no, I
it
wouldn't
differently?
have done it because I don't care about like again. For me, I don't care who asks me. Like I'm just gonna say no. But my no is there was actually a vivid memory of doing not just life chain, but we were near that Trillium Clinic thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was literally just you and I standing at a damn corner with two sides, like two jackasses, like, because we went to the Siena Church or whatever.
Yeah.
Grabbed the signs from the back, and it was just literally the two of us standing there.
I remember this.
Couple of ladies, like, pulled up, stopped, honked. The lady rolled out her window and said something about her balls and drove away.
I don't remember that.
Oh,
actually.
dude, it was hilarious. Right? So
how many years ago would you say? Would you peg that?
We were. I think I was just out of uni, so like 2014ish to 2015 in that area. But anyways, and there's a nuanced reason as to why I say no, though, because I think life chain itself is sort of commendable because it's a non-violent, silent protest.
Yeah.
Keyword being silent. I think the people who had like a crazy issue with us are probably thinking about some denomination of like Christians in the U.S. who literally yell at people outside of abortion clinics. Right?
Or they're just also the opposite. They're like the counterpart of those people who would yell at abortion clinics. Yeah. They would be the same ones who just yell at you for just having an opposing opinion. They're just.
And again, I don't know if you want to like keep going on like the divisive whatever abortion thing, but I want to sort of keep it more focused on like practicing religion to some degree, right? Because we can easily go down that path, and I'm trying to be careful here to keep that focus on the practicing Christianity bit. where I think because of the misunderstanding, it's like when you have different avenues
Yeah.
and you see that one avenue is like being more and more misunderstood, it takes a larger effort to correct that misunderstanding and like clarify your point. You
Mm-hmm.
spend so much more time clarifying your point than actually getting through to someone,
Yeah.
right? So I'm thinking about it in that sense. That is the main reason I'd say no.
Because in that silent protest, you're not able to clarify your stance.
Exactly. It's like all the things, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not the fault of the people who are doing it, but it's. I also think people to some degree have to react to their environments. It's the same thing as like, oh, I've had a very successful business
Mm.
since 1987, but now you're in 2005, 2008.
Yep.
If you're not transitioning into like a digital space,
Mm-hmm.
yes, what you're doing was really good. You're serving all your clients, but the clients are gravitating towards the virtual space and the digital space now,
No, I think
right?
you made a really good point that I think really sums up kind of the reason why I didn't grab a sign. Um, like I did kind of say it right. I didn't think it was the right approach. A little like, but the
Mm.
thing is, you put it into words really well for me. Where yeah, I agree. I think I'm not able to tell anyone or explain my stance. It's just you're seeing me hold a sign. Now you're making a full judgment call on exactly who I am, and assuming why I'm doing it. But you said this as well, and I think it's worth reiterating, which is it is still really commendable to go out there still and do this because you still also want to show that there are people who are they see this as something that's really important that they want to stand for it, right? And it might open it might open conversations or doors to some people who might be willing to at least ask questions and then I don't know. Like there's some value basically. I'm trying to say there might be some value that
I agree. Honestly, as you were talking, I was thinking about like this one intersection at Square One. Have you gone by there recently, where it's like a ultra like conservative square, or like near like Duke of York? There's like signs on all four corners of the street, or like F Trudeau or whatever. It's just very very like potent, like very
mm-hmm.
concentrated right wing sort of thought,
Yeah.
whatever, just being shared in public, and it just puts you off even if you agree with those like policies or whatever.
Yeah.
Just seeing the aggression in it to some degree puts you off. I'm not saying again life chain people are aggressive in any way, but it's that same vibe of like the
Mm-hmm.
few people who do it like to some weird degree. It's the whole like the extremes get caught on fire and shared, and like now the people who are sort of trying to be reasonable
Mm-hmm.
are wrapped in or rolled in, like pushed towards the polar opposites. But let's take this back to practicing your faith, though, because I think that is a much more relatable, day to day, applicable
Mm-hmm.
part of our conversation. So you're talking about to what degree do you participate in church related things, if I'm not
Yeah, or
mistaken.
just how it has changed my community. Not having that community has it really affected me, and I think answering it now, breaking out like these stories and really thinking about it, yeah, I'm sure it has affected me um, in those little ways. But in the whole, like in the grand scheme of things and how I still see the value in my faith and the overarching concepts, nothing really has changed in that. I still stand by those beliefs. One thing though that I kind of wonder though is like being at that life chain thing, I didn't see a lot of people, not as many,
Mm.
or the numbers have, if not like dwindled, maybe they just have gone down by like 10%. Like it's
That's what dwindle means.
yeah.
I thought you were going to say stagnated, which is like stayed the same.
Yeah, sorry, I was kind of trying to say like, well, no, because sorry, dwindle is also like when they dwindle, it's like it literally comes down to like small numbers.
That's what you okay.
Right? That's what I mean by
Sure.
dwindle. As in like they didn't dwindle to
It,
10
the word
people.
dwindle. Just see that sounds funny. Check out my dwindle, boy. dreidel.
But you get what I'm saying, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not that they went and the numbers have now shrunk to like 10% of what they were. I think they still have 90% of the people that I used to see are still doing it. But I would have expected the number to have grown, especially with some of the people who are kind of vocal about this stuff that I still have in like my social media. You think, oh, I expect you to see there, but then they're not. But again, that's not the only way for them to do it, and maybe they're also in the position of this is the wrong way to go about it nowadays.
They're probably doing live chain in the metaverse.
That, or I think it's also all over, right? So they could be somewhere else.
I know.
Who knows? I don't know. I just it's kind of a random side thing, but going back to what we were saying, or you had a question, or you asked me something.
What other ways, like, has practicing been different, like, without your quote unquote community or without being around people that also follow your faith? Because for the most part, you've been exposed to people who are from more diverse religious backgrounds.
Yeah.
Right? So I guess how has that changed things for you?
I don't think, having that experience hasn't really changed anything for me. I think in many ways it's solidified why I believe what I believe. Because I've listened and tried to, like, I hear other people's opinions and I respectfully, like, understand, like, or not, sorry, it's like I respectfully deny what they think. No, I understand why they think what they think, and then it just doesn't really fully work. It doesn't fully answer all my questions, right? So I think that's why I'm like, you know what, even though I don't fully practice everything that I'm supposed to, I'm never gonna really change never is a strong word, but
never say never. Sorry, I had to. So sorry, I cut you off, but I was honestly thinking, within all this, if the whole community thing and the diverse people doesn't bother you, then what the hell's wrong with your friend and, like, all these other people? Like, oh, I need community. Do they still have a point, or are you just different?
What do you mean they still have a point?
That is like, oh, I need a community to be able to practice my faith and be held accountable, etc., etc.
Well, she didn't say that, though. That was my assumption.
Oh, okay.
Not even an assumption, but that was just a thought that I had. I was like, is this happening because of a lack of community? Because some people still, and even then, you can say, for example, like, the reason you and me we're still within each other's community, and we're.
Oh, sorry.
So okay. Maybe we're just because we're so close, we have just a large impact on each other. That's what's kept us like this.
So to be honest with you, I think it's the opposite way. I think the reason we're this close to each other is because we treat this.
We don't put pressure on each other.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, when you didn't go to church, I didn't care, right? So. But
I guess that makes me feel partially bad, because my intention was never to. Not for you. I'm talking back. So when I was talking to my friend a couple days ago, I felt like I was kind of pushing a little bit, like, with my questions. I was genuinely trying to understand, but I also think there was a underlying tone of, like, no, go back, right? And I don't like, and that kind of rubs me the wrong way, where I'm like, why was I so adamant on you going back? And I think, okay, no, the obvious answer is because if I believe it's important, right, I would at least hope you hold that same level of importance. Not same level, but similar level of importance. Kind of like the whole story of Job, right? The determination.
Okay. Was it determination?
Not determination, but the unwavering faith.
That's better.
Yeah, it's like you have this, no matter how hard things might get and how much you might also make mistakes, you're not going to waver from knowing what you know. And I guess when that shakes, it's more like, or that could lead, that's where you could get into, like, interesting territory where things can go.
But I think that's the whole point of the whole conversation about boundaries. Every person has different boundaries. So just because my boundaries are smaller than yours, so
Mm-hmm.
you're going to fault me for wavering in my faith or walking away from my faith. Like, you
But
know
that's the
what I
thing. I
mean?
don't think I fault anyone. It's more
Right.
just a fear, right? Like, because
Sure.
you also know that, so like bringing back community a little bit, right? That if you aren't within that person's like direct circle, and so you're not going to see them for a while, that if they're already down a certain trajectory, it's kind of like it's almost like, like echo chambers, right? It's like, oh, I'm walking into this one, and you're like, no, 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 come back to this one, and you can pull them back and maybe like get them back, not into it. So it's also wrong. It's like, it's a really bad example, because I'm not trying to say people should be in like
Only my
yeah,
echo
yeah,
chamber.
exactly, right.
Like,
Stay in this one. No, 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 that's not the goal either. You should really expose yourself to everything, right?
okay, okay.
No, you should, right? There is the point, is to
Yeah.
challenge yourself and to really go out there, and that's how you make any like your beliefs stronger anyways at the end of the day. But the concept though that I'm trying to outline here is that if you see someone going though into a different one, and they're not doing it with the intent of like just exploring and then not coming back, but like, weighing out different things, but they're just walking into another one and then getting like sucked into it, then it's just as dangerous as if you were in any echo chamber,
No,
right?
I want to push back on this pretty hard. Actually.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think there's a level of presumption and some degree of condescension, because I know this friend, and I give her enough credit
Mm-hmm.
to be like, no matter where she goes, she's gonna continue questioning.
Well, I think, okay, well, the thing is, you're taking it completely different than what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know.
I'm
because,
speaking to the feeling that I had,
oh, okay.
not
okay.
speaking to
I'm sorry.
her.
Misunderstanding.
That's what I'm saying. You're taking it in a
Yeah,
different context.
Because no, even in terms of, oh, okay. So the feeling that you had is, I might lose her to this.
Yeah, I think the reason
dark
I
side.
had
Yeah,
this
okay,
feeling that came out
Yeah.
underlying is because I had that. Like, no, don't do that.
That wasn't clear to me. I sort
Yeah,
of
yeah.
like conflated the two.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm like, that's not her personality.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And at the end of the day, I give her the respect of it's her life and she's got to go where she's got to go. That's just why when I removed myself after like the conversation, I thought about it. I was like a little disappointed with like why I was pushing so much a little bit. Again, that underlying like just like nudge. Like I was like,
Yeah.
why is that even there? But it was because I was just more like, you're going in the wrong direction a little bit, and it was a weird approach that I haven't had in a while. That mental, like, it actually, I got scared a little bit, like, oh, what if my brain's starting to like settle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which I think it's gonna happen, and like you can't escape it, right? But you don't ever want to. Man, it sucks. Like, I don't like that. It's like you just become very locked in on how you think, and I'm like, oh no, I refuse. I want to like keep. Yeah. Sorry, you were gonna chime in or something though.
It's interesting that you fear that, because you and I have had that exact same thought, where no matter how old we get, we still want to be able to explore ideas, even if they feel absurd and seem absurd.
Mm-hmm.
We want to explore the novelty of these different things.
Yeah. See what value they can
and
produce.
the way I approach, it's funny, right? Because people talk about evangelizing and like spreading the word or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I talk to people who have different belief systems, I never try to evangelize, because I almost see it as, I'm not even like the right personality or the right person or the right example to follow. So who am I to evangelize? But I just let my curiosity lead me. And I think that's part of the reason I'm able to explore these different ideas with these people, and they feel comfortable enough sort of sharing and like saying what they truly think and truly feel. Right? Because there's no sort of a hidden agenda or even like a subconscious thing. Because I keep asking myself, I'm like, I all I want to do is learn why you think this way or why you feel this way. And it's funny because in your conversation, maybe subconsciously a part of you in the background is like, oh, I'm scared of this, but it's like it's one of two ways, right? One, you let that fear overtake you and then gradually build, and now you're saying these thoughts that are subconscious, and they sort of seep into your interaction with different people from different thoughts, ideas, and echo chambers, or you stay on top of it, get control of it, and maybe some of it bleeds now and then, but you truly show them that you care about them as a person instead of what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's you can go in either way, but one of the other thoughts I had is going back to the whole community, and you're not affected by your community. What has caused this quote unquote slippage or change in your subconscious fears about people? It's like, oh, they might go away or whatever. Do you feel like that has grown over time or changed in some way, or was it always there to some degree? Because when I think back to you in the past,
Mm-hmm.
that was like, for me, what stood out for you with you is you cared about the person more than anything else, and you would do ask the questions or say the things that would help them at the end of the day. So is this an extension of trying to help? But because your help used to be like what they need in that time, in that moment, regardless of like
No, I think that's
where
not that
you,
hasn't changed.
yeah.
I think the thing is with the example with like our friend.
Mm.
Keep saying my friend is our friend. It was circled around religion though, right? The conversation
Sure.
was already, so it's like I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to just be like how do you avoid, like that's the topic, right?
Yes.
So if like I'm you discuss it because of the topic. If it's not within the topic, then I don't really need to bring it up. It's not really something I care to do. But yeah, to answer, I think one of the earlier questions you kind of asked about where this came from or something along those lines, because at least that's what the vibe.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I had a thought that crossed my mind before, and it was part of it might be just because I'm also looking for some level of validation, or proof that what I believe in is also worth, like, not worth believing in, but that there's like some truth and valid, like that it's valid to believe what I'm doing.
That's nice. Yeah.
And I think that comes from not just everyone believing, but like if I respect somebody, they're able to also believe, that I'm like, okay, that's a good benchmark. Maybe, I don't know. It's like it's not a fully fleshed out thought. I think that's just kind of where it probably stemmed from a little bit.
It's a tricky one.
Right?
It's almost like, to some degree, it sounds like you're trying to create your own echo chamber. The people that I respect are going to believe the things that I believe in. It's it's like turning. Where for me, it's I get joy or whatever from respecting the people around me for what they believe. Because with the specific friend, the reason I respect her is not because she believes or doesn't believe, it's because how she struggles with it.
Yeah.
Right? So the one thing that I know about her is no matter where on the spectrum she lies, from faith to atheism, she'll still ask questions. And I appreciate the person that asks the questions more than someone who's just like, yeah, I'm this way. Either I'm like, oh yeah, I'm fully atheist, or I'm fully like God, whatever, all the way. So yeah, to me, the value congruence comes from wanting to keep questioning and like being skeptical of like, am I on the wrong side? Am I on the right side? So that's why I feel so close to her. Not because she believes in what I believe, and she holds faith above everything.
I know you weren't saying that, but sorry, are you implying that you're saying that you think that's what I was saying? That I value her because she holds her faith high?
No, what I heard was I would want the people that I respect to want to believe the way I believe or believe the way I believe. That's what I heard. You can run the tapes back if you want.
No, no, that's something along the lines of what I meant, but that's not exactly what I meant. I meant it more as in there's a sense of validation that what I believe is correct
Yeah, you
because
did say
someone
that.
I respect
You did say that. Yeah.
agrees.
Yeah.
And it's not that they agreed from the get-go, and or like you said, like because there's a danger, like if I just respect people that believe what I believe, and it's like the point is, like you said, the way she processes information, the way she thinks, the way it was never like of course I believe. It was never like that with her, right? That because of that, when she made a choice to do so, it was maybe a sense of validation, like, oh yeah, okay,
Right.
there's good. Like it's almost like it cleared another test, right?
Yes.
If she's like a test subject, and it's like,
Yeah.
nice.
I
Subject,
think,
patient, 10, like agreed that the premise was worth believing in. So, but again, it's not a fully fleshed out thought.
no, no, no. I think
Just,
that does make a lot of sense.
yeah.
I think the urge to depend on that validation
Mm-hmm.
is good, but I think that almost adds as a counterpoint to your community thing, to some degree. And to be honest with you, I think if you ask me enough questions, I would break down on the community thing as well, because we boldly claim it's like, oh, I don't need no stinking community, right? Because we both know to some degree we'll both break.
Yeah.
But relative to most people, we don't depend on the community. But this is a prime example of like, there is some level of community validation happening for you.
And sorry to go back to the community thing. Like if I really look at both of us in our lives, a community does have like again, no matter how small the community is, the effect is evident. It's not, it doesn't have to be massive effects, but I think it definitely will make subtle changes to like how you approach things, right? And you can actually we can go in like without actually going into it with you like too deep. I can just sum up even like the COVID, right? The COVID arc of our, like there was like, that is a good example of like how the isolation can change things. So
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anything from my island. You're too far away.
your mental island.
Yeah. Sorry, we left off on the community piece. People that you respect, when they believe the things you eventually believe, validates the thing that you believe.
Yeah.
Right.
I think, or just again, it just gives a little bit more confidence. It's not, it just gives you that extra little push to be like, yeah, you know what, this is good. Part of it also could be when you, or where you, I don't actually know, like, you ever feel like you take on responsibility for things that aren't really on you, but you're kind of like, oh, I could have been there a bit more.
Perhaps I've done that now and then, but I think when I reflect back, I try to remind myself that you are hardly even in control of your own life. So if I reserve the right to make my own mistakes, I should give other people the right to do the same.
Oh yeah.
Right. So, and I'm not saying everything other people do is a mistake, but I put it on myself. Like, I know that I have made mistakes in the past, but I deal with the consequences and I own them, so like almost out of respect, you owe that to the people around you as well. So in terms of, did I not do something for someone? Like, yeah, I don't always do the thing that I'm supposed to do, but even if I don't, like, how much are you going to beat yourself up or whatever about it?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. How can you really No, yeah, I don't know. I think that's a fair point. I don't really have much to say to that. How do you beat yourself up about it? Oh man, there's like a question on the tip of my tongue. I just can't think of it. Can't
Is
find
it
my.
still related to community?
Not community, more so about it's like something has to do with like the whole. I was really the Job thing, because when you brought it up the first time around, I really liked it. I was like, "There's something about that story that really stands out to me right now. That perseverance." I don't know what's so funny.
No, I want you to find your thought. I'll bring my thought later.
Bring your thought, and maybe it'll spark mine.
No, I won't.
What's your thought?
No, so what I'll do to help you is I'll start like running through the Job story and maybe it'll pop out.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So basically, God finds this guy who's like very diligent and like, faithful to him. And then the devil's like, I can make this guy turn. Just don't help him. Just stand aside, don't help him. And so I think he loses his work, his house. Eventually, he loses his kids, got like boils or whatever the shit on his body. And like, he's still like, God, whatever. And then I'm like, not obviously not going through all the details of the story because I don't remember them. But at the end, like, he still doesn't relent to the devil. And then eventually, God's like, oh, fine. I got you. I think. But what was so intriguing to the story there?
I think so I think this thing about the Job story that really intrigues me is that like it's not anything new, but applying it to what we're talking about, it kind of is. It's the. I'm trying to find the right words here because it's like you are defining, or the story is defining, a line in which faith in God no longer is about how God serves you, but your relationship with Him, or how you serve Him in a personal level, right?
Yeah.
Because there is, I think we've always played with the idea of like what exactly is the balance or of like a good faith or not, or like the different levels, or like basically there's like been questions about just like how do you even define like what faith is and the levels of it. And I think that there's one defining line that Job's kind of putting in the sand, which is like there's a point in time where your faith, the way you practice or why you practice, is because it's supposed to give you something, right? It's supposed to help you improve. It's supposed to, like, God's supposed to be like granting you wishes, or that idea. And the whole Job story literally is saying, devil's like, yeah, people only like you, God, because you do things for them, right? So what happens if you don't? And I think Job is an example of a challenge of saying, as much as you are there because you are receiving something from your faith, you are also supposed to be there because of either your relationship with God, your personal one, or because you understand you're there to also like serve or do something. I don't know. Like that's the part that I haven't really stretched out yet.
Yeah.
But
So
you see what I mean?
let me I guess extend that way. I need some water.
Mm-hmm. Do you have more?
You want some?
Yeah, please. I'm out.
You can just put it down beside you.
Thanks. You want me to pour you in some?
No, I'm good. So, it's not about what God is doing for you, but it's how you can serve God. And I think the extension of that is, if you believe in Christianity, God has literally given you life, given you the world, given you everything that you have.
Hmm.
And you just need to be thankful. Not need to, but you ought to be thankful to the entity or the person that has given you all these things, because he doesn't owe you anything.
Yeah.
He just decided to give you the things that you have, and the life that you have, and the family that you have. So yeah, I do see your point of you don't just believe in God because he grants your petitions or intercessions or prayers or whatever you ask for, or even if you don't ask for it, just being grateful for the things you do have.
Mm-hmm.
But even, I guess, when you don't have it, now, I guess the qualm or the spiral that sticks out to me in this whole thing is twofold. One, what if you're already in a shit situation? It's like, and I think there's some level of being grateful for even the little bit of things that you do have, because putting religion aside, just the mental exercise of learning how to be grateful for the small things,
Mm-hmm.
scientifically is proven to have to grant you a more enriched life, regardless of religion. So you don't even have to thank
Mm-hmm.
God; you just need to be thankful, right? But there's actually another crazy psychological thing that happened where when they studied gratefulness, the person that was being thanked had the highest like spike in joy. So it's almost like being appreciated.
Makes you the happiest.
Yeah. But obviously, genuinely or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because people are like, "Oh, just be grateful." But it's actually the person who receives the gratefulness gets happier, and then they're more likely to reciprocate it. So this doesn't apply to God, but I just thought it was like a very cool study. Um, Sorry. So the first one is the shit life and learning to be grateful for the small stuff. But then the other qualm that I see here is, what if God's not real? And then you're just like doing a thanking or whatever. It's almost like you're operating in this delusion of like you're living in the home with an abuser, and then you're just like, oh, so learn to be great, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that God is the abuser,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, despite all the evidence that like there's nothing to be grateful for, you're trying to create a reason that is stemmed from a delusion. Maybe that's the thing that'll help you. I don't know. I'm sort of like fighting myself here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the thing that'll help you and actually get you out or get you through the situation. But there's something odd that stems out to me here.
Well, I think.
If God's not real, and you're just thanking this emptiness.
Well, I think. Well, the first thing I wanted to address the gratefulness part, like, because the whole point of the Job story, to further that, is like, it's like literally put a person where they have nothing to be grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just have to. You just can't. Then, like you said, if you believe he's real, you you can't deny, like, whatever the reason for all their suffering you're going through, you are still faithful, or you won't just turn your back on God because you understand he still exists.
But I guess let's dissect belief is real. First off, that's a faith-based claim,
Mhm.
right? And when people are put under enough pressure and enough grief, they will make themselves believe that facts are wrong.
Yeah.
So what chance does God have when people can convince themselves that facts are wrong?
But that's why Job is the extreme story of that
Sure.
idea, right? Like, you take away all hope and belief, or reason to believe,
Okay.
and then yet you still believe,
But then
because in your
how?
heart you know, or you can't change the fact that that it's true. So to go back to your thing, that's why, if the whole, like, you don't know if he's real, if like he doesn't exist, then that's usually why people will just walk away anyways. Like, they're like, what's the value? Because They're not really focused on the idea that God's real or not. They're just like, what can this give me? Right? But then I don't think anyone, if you really talk about like someone who's like, okay, no, I'm going to believe no matter what, and then turns out God's not real. That's just the Pascal's wager, right? Like,
Yeah, that wager never sat right with me. It's the whole economics theory of there's no free lunch. Where again, Pascal's
it's funny
wager,
you've said this, but I don't remember actually.
I know, because we keep going back and forth. I keep struggling with this Pascal's wager thing.
What's wrong with it again?
The whole claim is like, even if God doesn't exist, but the way, if you live your life in a way that he does exist, then you win.
You reap benefit, period. Yeah.
But the cost of living your life that as if the way God does exist, it's every hour isn't Sunday. It's every Lent where you're not eating meat on Friday. It's all these other things. So there is a baked in cost of living.
Yeah,
as
but
if God
Pascal's
does
point
exist.
is like you lived a good life though. It's even if you turns out you're like, so basically the option, right? Like if you turn out to be wrong, God doesn't exist. You still lived a good life. So that still carries over to the you lived a good life and God exists. It's like
Sure.
the claim is like, okay, you now also get to go to heaven. And what's wrong with the way you lived? Because ultimately it was a, good life. Like a proper life. I'm trying to get away from good life, but you know what I mean? Like a
welcome to the good
yeah.
life.
Like a proper nice life. Like an enjoyable
sure.
one. I don't know.
But it's almost like there's like bounds on your life. It's not the life that you would have chosen to live. And I guess part of me is like looking at the optimization function of like, if I'm trying to optimize and one of my parameters, in this case the God parameter, is assumed to be true and it's not true, that's not the optimal function. That's not the optimal life. I know I do sound a bit hedonistic the way I'm talking about it, but all I'm trying to communicate is that there is a cost to living,
Of course,
as if God does exist when he doesn't.
because I'm like, isn't there a cost though if you?
The cost is based on the assumption.
Like
If you're wrong, yeah, you burn in hell.
I mean, like, okay, God exists. You live your life the way you want to live. Sorry, I'm trying to mean like, okay. I'm trying to take it away from the God thing for a second, and essentially, I'm gonna just like word vomit it, and then you can just make sense of it.
Go for it.
God, okay, take away God. You live your life the way you want to live, which is not in line with what God wants you to like do. So you make these decisions. How many of those non-godly decisions would have negative effects on people around you or on yourself that, whether God exists or not, are just negative to your life?
And negative to the people around you.
Yeah.
Because in your like realm, the reason that God wants you to do these things is because they're optimal.
Optimal, yeah.
The optimization function is baked into the belief of God anyways.
Yeah.
So veering away from the God function is actually suboptimal.
Yeah, you're causing potential harm even though you wanted to do it that way. It doesn't mean it was optimal. It just means you got to do what you wanted, but the cost of what you chose to do could be greater than you calculated for.
Yeah.
So how do you bake that, or how do you throw that into?
Yeah. So this, I guess, the adolescent part of me goes back to the same idea of people have the agency to make their own mistakes, right? So that's one thing. Sure, you can do all your things, like we can go and like screw around and and then we live with the consequences of that, right? So in that case, so I think Pascal's wager has a literal caveat baked into it. And what you're saying is not just you have these two options and then the one option wins either way. What you're saying is there's one definite option that is the best, and that's different from Pascal's wager, because Pascal is saying there are two valid options, and one option you're better off no matter what. I guess.
Well, no,
you're saying
Pascal's
the same
wager is
thing.
there's 4.
Okay,
There are
explain.
4 options. There's the I believe and I don't believe.
Okay.
And there's the live a good life, live a bad life. So
Okay.
you can live a good life and believe. Or you can live a good life and don't believe.
Okay.
And then you can live a bad life and believe. And you can live a bad life and not believe. So there's 4.
So what happens to the people who live a bad life and believe?
They go to hell. At least that's his wager.
Sure.
Because you believe, but you lived a bad life. Or maybe let's say you don't even go to hell. The idea is, though, that... No. I think in his wager, you go to hell because you lived a bad life. So because of that, it doesn't make sense for you to live a bad life.
What happens when you don't believe and live a good life?
You go to hell.
Huh?
I think. I don't remember fully.
Yeah, so I'm confused.
No, I think that's what it is. I think because the idea is that he's saying... The whole concept is that in the wager, in the boxes, you... In the boxes, you are in one scenario, you are going to heaven, I think. And then in the other 3, you don't. But the pro of living a good life, if you don't believe... if you live a good life but God doesn't exist, is you still lived a good life. So in the other 2 options, they're just negative because at one point you are not meeting one of the 2 criteria.
I don't understand Pascal's wager.
Wait, what?
Like the specifics, I feel like if we're going to talk about it, I want to actually know what the guy said instead of assume what he said.
It's funny because I knew it inside and out before. That's
but it's a good thing to go back to fundamentals, right?
Let's try. Oh, it's a mobile game too. We should play it. It's funny actually. You know how Pascal's wager, Google will like give you the top like searched.
Yeah.
Like and then categorize it from So the game has taken over the entire like first page of like
Shit.
Yeah. It's like all just websites about the game and not the actual wager. So if God exists, then theists will enjoy eternal bliss, cell A, while atheists will suffer eternal damnation, cell B. If God exists. So if God exists and you believe in God, you have infinite rewards. If God exists and you don't believe, you have infinite punishment.
That makes sense.
Right? And atheists will enjoy infinite... Okay. If God does not exist, then theists will enjoy infinite happiness before they die. And then they added a 250 units worth. They added a metric. And atheists will enjoy finite happiness too, though not so much because they will experience angst rather than the comforts of religion. Regardless of whether God exists, then theists have it better than atheists. Hence, belief in God is the most rational belief to have.
I didn't understand the third and fourth.
So, when God does not exist, you don't have eternal damnation. So, there's no infinite suffering.
Yes.
So, the idea is that if you're going to live your life not believing in God, and God does not exist, you still live a somewhat happy life or a happy life, but he is adding a little bit of value to how religion will basically provide you happiness over when you make not selfish decisions. When you make decisions...
He calls them atheists. He's almost like demonizing the term atheist.
Maybe.
Well, he's associating them with angst and whatever.
Kind of, yeah. I think it says here atheists will enjoy. It says atheists will enjoy finite happiness too, which he does say. If you believe in God, but God does not exist, you will enjoy finite happiness in life.
Yes.
But he says, but not so much. So yeah, again, this is also a summed up version. Sure. I don't think these are the words of Pascal specifically. Yeah. but because they will experience angst rather than the comforts of religion. So that's actually called the superdominance argument. Then you have the expectations argument. So what if the atheist is a happy hedonist? Or if the theist is a miserable Puritan? In that case, the value cell D is greater than that of C, and the dominance argument no longer works. However, there is a 50-50 chance that God exists. Then we can calculate the expectation as follows.
I'm sorry, I'm actually not following you. I don't think you're following you, but I could be.
Oh, I'm following. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Um.
I think this would help with like a visual and
So it's okay. So here's the visual. There's the table, and I am following. I think we'll see if I actually follow once I make sense of everything. So if an atheist is a happy hedonist, right? This is a happy hedonist, so does not believe in God. So in this line, and the theist is
a Puritan.
Is a miserable Puritan. I think.
Yeah.
Is what he said.
Yeah, that's right.
Then what does he say? He says, in that case, the value of cell D is greater than that of C, and so,
yeah, I also don't know what that means.
it's this one, this D versus C. So this is A, B, C, D.
Okay.
So D. So the value of cell D is greater than the value of cell C, because the person who's a hedonist is just happier, living a happier life. There's more value there than someone who's a miserable Puritan.
Sure.
On C. And the dominance argument no longer works. So the dominance argument, which is this argument, the superdominance argument, is saying that you are getting 250 units of happiness. Like they added like a increment, like versus 200. There's a slight edge of enjoyment that the person who believes will have, even though God doesn't exist. No longer works. However, if there is a 50-50 chance that God exists, then we can calculate the expectation as follows. And so using the table, the expectations for believing in God, positive infinity x, and then there's a mathematical equation, plus a finite value x. You obviously like the math more. Equals a positive infinity, and the expectations for not believing has a negative infinity. So that's why he puts positive infinity versus negative infinity, which is, I think, still goes back to the, because you believed in God and God does exist, you have infinite value. Like it's the same thing. Like
I still have problems with Pascal's wager. Now it's because I don't think I understand it fully, but I still see some kind of level of bias there, or I don't fully understand. Obviously, he's smarter than I am.
Well, I'm not even saying, just to be clear, I'm not saying that Pascal's wager is the reason why everyone should believe. It's not some.
No, but I like philosophical models, right? Because they help simplify things within a boundary. And then if you can agree to it within a boundary, then you test what happens when you remove the boundaries slowly or broaden the boundaries. That's why I like philosophy. But I just think if we're going to talk about that, either one of us would need to actually fully understand what the principles are or what the basis is. Because it's honestly, I like where this went, because it literally shows when two people think they're talking about the same thing but they're not talking about the same thing. You're making up stuff that sounds right to you in the moment, but it's not linked to reality. In this case, the reality of what Pascal actually wrote. I feel like I don't understand Pascal's wager at all, and I was talking about it. You might feel differently.
I thought we were kind of on. That's what I mean. I think, even though maybe you say you didn't understand it, and I clearly didn't fully know it, when I was talking about it, we actually stumbled upon it still, because when I brought up the whole premise of the optimal way to live would still lead to better decision making for yourself and your family or friends, the people around you, that was the whole point he made with the slight edge that someone who lives a good life as if God existed would enjoy more benefit, just slight benefit. Like that was his whole point in the super dominance argument as it's like
Sure.
being named there.
But that's also not the entirety of his claim. And I don't know, for me, in order to like speak on something or like have an opinion on something, I feel like I claim something without actually understanding what the thing is. And that's like, it's one of my, I guess, peeves or whatever. And I think I did it from a sense of genuinely not knowing, because I thought I was aware of it. But just looking at the level of complexity and thought that went to his idea, I feel like a lot of the nuance and like the actual richness of the idea is lost. And I think that's why I struggle with it, because his idea seems stupid to me.
Would you ever then go through the entire...
Yeah, like as soon as we stop here, I'm going to my room and watching a bunch of things to like re-up on it, to fully understand it. And once I understand it, I'm like, oh, that's why he thinks that. Because I genuinely think, even for people who give me ideas that I initially don't agree with, that's why I keep asking the questions. Because I'm like, somewhere this is all making sense to you, right? And I want to get to that point with you. And then I can disagree with you or like question your motives or question your method. But my first step should be, tell me everything that you think.
I'm definitely interested to see what you find, because like, yeah, we looked at 2 of the 3 that it was stating are like the 3 different ways to look at the argument, or with, I guess they changed like slight variables.
Sure.
I do think the overarching premise is still the same. Like I think it still is that 4 sector.
Yes.
No matter what, and the what if you believe and don't believe in God. And I guess he just looks at it from those 3. But I would like to see, if there's, like you said, much deeper.
There's a richness to his idea, yeah.
That you can like pull and be like, oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Because it's actually really nice. Yeah. Like part of me also wants to go through it myself. Maybe not to the degree that you will like go through like everything. I'll probably just read through this document more and then like get the gist. Because I'm realizing, having talked about it, like I forgot the 4. Like, I remembered 1, 2, but then the other 2, the whole like, But the thing is, I do think, again, we stumbled on it a little bit though. We didn't really, we weren't so far removed from the.
You had the spirit of his idea.
Exactly. It's not like we were way off base.
But sure, I'm not gonna, I guess, fight you on that a lot more, because I see where you're coming from. But individually, I have a qualm with talking about something without asking all the questions about it first, and I feel like I jumped into that without.
Well, I would love to, honestly, once you find out,
we'll do a full episode in Pascal's wager.
I'm down. I'm actually down. It would be really cool. If there's a lot to really dissect, I would love to like break into it and like discuss it and see if it holds up. Even again, it's funny because it's like we're talking about it, but it's never been enough of a reason to like say like this is why you should.
Yeah.
But
so I just like to me, again, I just like exploring ideas. So
yeah, fair. Why did we bring it up again though?
Best way to live, Job. Then you talked about, what if we are not here to be served by God, but we are here to serve God. And then I think that led to Pascal's wagers. Like, because I brought up, like, what if God's not real? Right? Yeah.
And then that was Pascal's wager. Yeah. It's like it's irrelevant because you...
Yeah, well, and for me, it's not irrelevant based on my current understanding of Pascal's wager. Because to me, there's a cost to everything. There's a cost to believing. There's a cost to not.
And you don't mind paying like if like basically even if like there's a premium, or it wasn't the most efficient way to live in the end, you still got to do what you wanted to do. So,
but that's also an assumption, right? It's, to me, part of it is like when you're holding eternal life against like, you could have like earthly hedonism. It's almost like, there's a rock over there, and you're telling me there's $1 million underneath that rock. Are you willing to give up the $10, which is like happiness in the earthly life,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like obvious when you raise the stakes so much, like $1 million. You're willing to give up $1 million effing dollars for $10? Really? And then what's truly happening here is like I'm just giving you my $10 and like there's a rock. It's like thanks. I just traded $10 for a rock. It's like it's like you make it sound so enticing that's like how like the return on investment is just I can't even compute it. Obviously you can because it's math.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those, right? It's like eternal life. You could give up eternal life because you don't want to go like do whatever like on
Yeah.
Earth, just Earth. Talking about practice.
You really don't want to give up $10 for all of this, but in the end, it's just a rock. I do think in practice, if I'm um, like in my in daily life, I don't think anyone is actually like utilizing Pascal's wager. What I mean by that is, for example, like if that's the case, we should be going to church every week, right? Like we should be not letting our desires like dictate what we want, and we should just be doing exactly like what
But
God is calling
don't
us
you
to
think
do,
that's the
right?
beauty of it? Because you are one personality, I'm one
Mm-hmm.
personality, and somewhere on this earth, there is a person that once they believe in a thing,
Mm-hmm.
they will literally do
Oh
sell
yeah,
everything that they
yeah.
have to get this piece of land because there's a treasure.
I've seen it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've
right.
seen it. 100%.
So it's like we can't discount that because there are people. It's like once I buy into something, I will go in, and then you have a crisis of faith or whatever you call it.
Yeah, but that's also like there's gonna be also like ups and downs, ebbs and flows, right?
Sure.
Where you're talking about also the person when they just get into it, right? Like
Yeah.
I just got into rock climbing. Oh my gosh. I'm just going to climb every like 3 times, 4 times a week. Like my whole life it's just I'm going to sell everything just to like climb cuz I love it. But then like 5 years in, am I as passionate? Right? I can speak to when I first started practicing my faith. Yeah, I was a little bit more on fire. Like getting into like all the volunteering stuff and like really trying to like push my like what else can I do to like for God or whatever. And then as it became more stale or as life became like it just averaged out, I guess, the balance between life and like faith, it was just like, oh wow, no, life is still pretty annoying. Or
Clip that.
yeah. It's just like it's not as black and white, right? But I have met people who 7 years in, 8 years in, they're stronger in their practicing than they were before, right? So to your point, there are people though who can maintain it and they stay in it because they realize the value. Which I honestly like. I find that those people though, they tend to have found faith later in life. Once they've had life experiences, because I think once they've seen what's on one side of the rock, or one side of the one side of the world, and they go to the other side, and they're like, oh, you know what, things are kind of nicer here, and then they're more likely to stay. Versus if you get in on it first, and this is what you experience, you might be like, but what's on that side? And so you still want to see what's on the other side before you like weigh your options.
Not always.
Not
Sorry,
always. Definitely not always.
No. I know. Like this is something that you and I have both seen, but the thought that came to my head is my grandparents, my parents, your parents, to some degree. They've grown up as Christians. They still practice, and they're gonna practice until the day that they die. It's not gonna stop.
But it could also be because back then information.
I know. There is like I was accounting for the generational factor, but the fact is there are to me. I didn't make the claim that there are people our age or young people or whatever. There are people that
exist,
commit and they stay the course. We're just what's it? Little Nancy's. I don't know if you're allowed to say that anymore.
What's that?
You don't know Nancy's? It's like
Like Karens? Like it's
no
a thing
no
like Karens?
no.
Or?
Yeah, it is. It's if you hang around older people, you hear these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's calling gay people fruitcake and like calling people sissies.
Yeah.
It's good old days, you know.
So what are Nancy's?
Nancy's like a sissy, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
It's like, oh, I can't do this, you know, one of those things.
Got you.
Yeah, man, some of those sayings are awesome. Should come back.
And bring them back.
Yeah.
Bring them back.
But anyways, yeah, there's some level of like, it's a sign of the times or like a product of our environment or whatever.
Yeah.
Generational thing. But like how much of that is just an excuse?
I think the point of the bringing up the Job thing was that I do think it's important. What?
Sorry, just keep talking. It's just jokes in my head. It's so bad. Go, I got the best side up. Just keep going. Just keep going.
I do think the Job thing, though, the reason it's important to bring up is... Do you think it's actually ideal for... Not, do you think it's possible for people to actually... Everyone to reach some level of like a Job-like faith? Or is it a standard? Like, is it a must? Like, you're not really practicing your faith fully until you actually hit that kind of like...
I think with stories like this, people put these characters on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he is this guy and I'm this other guy. And it happens not just with like biblical stories or saints. It also happens with athletes or regular people who can do crazy things. Like some guy who can rock climb a V6. It's like, oh, he climbs a V6. I'm just, starting out or whatever. So it's like human predisposition to create a barrier to the greatness. And to be honest, I didn't bring this up earlier, but there are, I don't know if they're biblical scholars, but people who read the Bible and study this stuff, who think that the story of Job is actually a metaphor. It's not true.
Oh, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't saying. You think it was true?
No, so what I'm trying to get to is like they start arguing over that versus taking the learnings from it, right? Yeah. So it's almost that like distraction thing. And even the whole like, oh, he's great and I'm not. Oh, he was not real and I'm like trying to live this real life. You just try to create excuses and whatever. And to some degree, it's like going back to your own idea of attributes and like propensities of doing certain things. Maybe Job was initially gifted or given that level of faith or the ability, the innate ability, and then he worked on it. It's almost like Michael Jackson had the physical attributes and he worked his ass off to become the GOAT, right? Right?
You said Michael Jackson, though.
Oh, Jordan, physical, whatever.
The physical. I was literally thinking about it. Yeah. It was like the physical or the talent.
No.
Or maybe MJ. You said Jordan. I just heard Jackson.
No. I probably said Jackson. But Jordan, like, if he didn't put in all that work, like, who would he be, right? So, it ties in all these different ideas. I want to bring up another Job thing. I know you wanted to wind it up, but
no, go, please.
There was this idea. It was brought up by this Bill Burr comic dude. Mm-hmm. And I think he's working on a bit about Job, like straight up.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But it's not for Christians, because he's literally like, God literally stepped out of the way and let the worst shit happen to Job. Mm-hmm. And then Christians are like, oh, look at Job. But he's like, no. Look at God. Like, what kind of guy makes you and just lets all the bad stuff happen to you? And then you're like, oh, yeah, you can come back or whatever. He does it way better. But just that idea of, like, how messed up can you be?
Do you really want
like, this
kind
is
of
your
God?
kid. And you're just like, yeah, I'm just going to let like, you know,
Everything
someone
hit
punched
the
my
fan,
kid.
yeah.
Yeah. It's like, huh, you saw your. It's almost like the parent.
It's not even you're still later. It's like, so do you still love me? Or yeah? Okay, cool.
Yeah. It's just the way he set up the premise. I'm
Yeah.
like, he's kind of twisted. You know, it's just.
And see, from that perspective, can anyone deny that? Right? Can you even, like, yeah, you can be like, there's definitely obviously a response, but you can't deny why that person feels this way now. Like this is why I don't believe, or this is why I
Yeah.
don't think Christianity makes sense, or why you can. No one can be like, no, that's a stupid reason. Like, no, that's actually a legitimate. Like, I understand why you don't get it, or why you don't think it makes sense for you, because that is kind of messed up, and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Why the heck do I believe that? Like, what the heck? And that's why it's almost like, it's like also not a story you. It's like if there were levels to stories, it's like you don't read that on the first day.
Yeah.
You read that when you are at that level again. that line that says, "Hey, the faith is no longer supposed to be just about how God serves you, but how you are actually doing something for God too." Like, which is like, I think, to kind of answer the question that I brought up earlier. Everything in the Bible is always just about like the ideals, right? Like, it's the ideal way to go about things. And I think Job is just the ideal that you can strive for with having that kind of faith, right? That belief. And I think the closer though you are to that, it's obviously the better, because then you're not going to, you're not like just, again, because it is kind of also on the other end messed up to just be like, no, I believe because God gives me millions of dollars every year. And then the second you go bankrupt because, you know, everything goes to shit, you're like, well, no, God's a jerk and I don't want to believe anymore. Like, or no, God's not real because clearly I wouldn't have lost this money. That's where you only believed because of the benefit it gave to you. And it's incredibly easy to believe in anything, right? When things go your way.
Yeah.
So, sorry, that story, that was kind of, God, it's a little twisted, yeah. It's the after, it's the, so do you still love me?
It's almost like a threat.
Yeah.
Like, do you want some more of this?
Yeah.
Or do you have you learned your
I don't
lesson?
know. But even though there's, that was the point. There's no lesson to learn. It was like, it's the two parents at the playground having a bet over the kid, and the kid's like dying, and it's just like, is that enough? And you're like, is my kid having enough? It's like, hey kid, you still love me? See, I told you, give me $5. Just take the 5, and then you take your kid home and you give him all the candy, and you're like, see, I do love you. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's kind of twisted.
Good take.
I think that's good. I like that take. That's really funny though. Oh man.
It was actually part of my miscellaneous topics about how the church is misunderstood. I was going to take it in the other direction because he's like shitting on the idea of like God sort of mistreating Job, and it's like misunderstanding that story to some degree. It's still hilarious, but it's still like misunderstood.
Yeah, it's taken out of context.
Yeah.
It's lost. Which I think, like, I wonder, like, do you do that with other religions? Like, when I've tried to like really,
like I've grown up around Muslims.
yeah,
And there are Muslims that take their own faith out of context, just like there are Christians that take their own faith out of context.
of course.
Right? So it's like,
it's just, I've listened to these arguments, these conversations, and it's just like, there's something so cyclical about their arguments, and like, you have to argue on their playing field and like how they see things, and you're just like,
to me, that's a little bit of like when you're in a relationship and it's like, oh, she should do the work first. Like, I don't care who does the work first, as long as we're talking. I'm like, if you need to work in these boundaries, I'm willing to join you in those boundaries if you don't feel uncomfortable, right? Like, that has not really bothered me as much. As long as like we can still joke around about it. You know, it's my key is I don't like to take things too seriously. Even the things that are serious to me, I don't like to treat them like overly serious.
Yeah.
It's not that they're not serious. It's just I think if you hold something too dearly in public, I guess it's a lack of vulnerability tactic, but it works because I'm able to have these conversations without feeling some type of way about it, right?
Yeah, no, that's fair. You just sell clothes.
Can I do a sign off with
Yeah,
this?
sure.
It's so stupid, but it works. It's just like the delivery.
Oh man, we're screwed. What the hell?